The dumbest way I've ever gotten in trouble is this: I cleared snow too early, like some kind of overachieving suburban menace, and my HOA president acted like I'd committed a felony with a snowblower, and yeah. An ambulance got stuck on my street while she was still out there taking time-stamped photos like she was filming a true crime documentary starring my driveway. My name's Oliver Garrison, and about 18 months ago I moved into Pine Ridge, this planned community just outside Boulder, Colorado. Picture the kind of place where the mailboxes all match, the lawns look like they get haircuts twice a week, and the sidewalks are so clean you could eat off them if you were the kind of person who enjoys punishment. In the summer, when I toured the neighborhood, it felt perfect: bright, quiet, safe families walking dogs, kids on scooters, the whole "we've got our lives together" vibe. People warned me about HOAs, but I figured, hey, I'm a grown adult. I can follow reasonable rules. I just didn't realize Pine Ridge wasn't built on reasonable. It was built on control, with a thin layer of decorative mulch. The first real snow hit early December, and it wasn't cute. It was 14 inches overnight, the kind of storm that turns morning commutes into survival games. I woke up at 5, half asleep, already hearing the wind shove snow against the windows, and I thought, all right, let's do this the responsible way. Clear it now before it gets packed down, before it turns into a sheet of ice that tries to break someone's spine. Back in October, I'd bought this top-of-the-line snowblower, $2,000 a beast. The thing chewed through snow like cotton candy, and honestly I was a little proud of it, like I'd adopted a loud metal dog that only understood one command: destroy winter. By 6:30, my driveway was perfect, sidewalk too, and then I wandered over and did my neighbor's walkway. Mr. Patterson, 78, bad hip, one of those older guys who still says much obliged like he's in an old western. It felt good. I went inside, cleaned up, grabbed coffee, headed to work feeling like I'd done something decent in the world. That feeling lasted until I got home and saw the bright yellow notice taped to my front door like a warning from the universe. It was on official Pine Ridge HOA letterhead, embossed seal and everything, like they spent more money on stationery than on common sense. I'm standing on my porch, breath coming out in little clouds, reading it: notice of violation, and there it is in bold. I had violated the snow removal protocol because snow removal must not commence before 8 a.m. on weekdays to avoid disturbing the peace and quiet. I read it again, thinking maybe my eyes were playing tricks. Nope. First offense, $250 fine. Payment due within 14 days. For clearing snow at 6:15 in the morning. Like the snow and I had planned this together as a prank on the neighborhood. I called the number on the notice, got voicemail because of course I did. I left a message, polite, calm, the kind of voice you use when you're trying not to sound like you're about to scream into a pillow. The voicemail cut me off before I could finish my phone number. Apparently even my message needed to follow HOA regulations. Next morning, 10:01 a.m. on the dot, my phone rings. Caller ID, Pine Ridge HOA. And then I hear her: Deborah Martinez, HOA president. Voice like a stapler, tight, efficient, and somehow offended that oxygen exists. Mr. Garrison, she says, I'm returning your call regarding your violation notice. I try to explain, new to the community, didn't know the rule, snow removal is a safety issue. I'm leaving for work, I was helping an elderly neighbor. She doesn't miss a beat. All community guidelines are available on the HOA website, and were included in your closing documents. Ignorance of the rules is not an excuse. I ask if we can reduce the fine, because $250 for trying to be responsible is insane. She hits me with the fine schedule like she's reading scripture. First offense $250, second $500, third $1,000 plus potential legal action, and then she tells me I can appeal at the next board meeting, but appeals are rarely successful, and she's already got photos and timestamps from 3 separate residents who observed me. Observed. Like I was an exotic animal operating heavy machinery at dawn. After she hung up, I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling like I'd been scolded by a strict elementary school principal who keeps a ruler in her desk for fun. Over the next few days, I asked around about Deborah. The reactions were telling. Eye rolls. Groans. One woman in the grocery store practically whispered, like Deborah might appear behind the cereal aisle and issue a violation for excessive complaining. Mr. Patterson told me Deborah once fined a family for leaving Christmas lights up 2 days past the deadline. Someone else said she tried to stop a cancer patient from parking a medical van in their own driveway because it wasn't an approved vehicle type. That's when I realized this wasn't about noise, it was about power. So I went to the December HOA meeting thinking, naively, that if I just spoke like a reasonable adult, the board would be reasonable adults back. The community center looked like a corporate lobby, glass and steel, and a lawn that probably has its own budget line item. Inside, about 20 residents sat in folding chairs wearing the same expression you see at the DMV. Deborah sat at the center of the board table in a navy pantsuit, blonde bob sharp enough to cut glass, reading glasses on a chain, folders stacked like a courtroom drama. She started the meeting exactly at 7, not a second early, not a second late, like punctuality was her love language. She called me up first. I explain. Again, snow is safety, people work, early clearing prevents ice. Maybe there should be exceptions for big storms or quieter machines. She looks at me like I suggested we replace the American flag with a trampoline. Mr. Garrison, she says, we are here to hear your appeal of the fine, not to debate HOA policy. Do you have evidence the violation notice was issued in error? No, because I did technically clear snow early. Then your appeal is denied. Next appellant. That was it. 10 seconds. Like my whole argument was a fly she swatted off the table. And then I watched her do it to everyone else. A woman fined for painting her door the wrong beige, a teenager's car on the street overnight, cold, efficient, almost bored. Afterward, a guy my age named Marcus shook his head and said, "Welcome to Pine Ridge, best advice is pay and stay off her radar." But paying felt like swallowing a lie still. I paid, because I'm not stupid, and fighting an HOA in court over $250 is like setting your house on fire to kill a spider. Here's where it gets ugly, though, because once you've been hit, you start noticing where the punches are coming from. I read the community guidelines, 147 pages of it, like I was studying for the world's worst exam, and I found contradictions so obvious it felt like a joke nobody had bothered to fix. One section said snow removal can't start before 8 a.m. Another said walkways must be cleared within 4 hours of snowfall. Ending another insisted homeowners must keep access clear for emergency vehicles at all times. Those rules can't all exist together during a real Colorado storm. They're like telling someone, don't cook before sunrise, but dinner has to be served by 6 a.m. January came in brutal, storm after storm, and I followed the rules exactly. Exactly. I waited until 8 a.m., not a minute earlier. I stopped helping Mr. Patterson too, felt terrible, but I wasn't about to get fined again for being decent. He hired a neighborhood kid and told me, "Don't worry about it, son, Deborah's got folks scared to sneeze around here." Then January 28th hit. Winter storm warning, 16 to 20 inches predicted, starting at midnight. I went to bed with a plan, forming petty. Yes, but after being punished for trying to help, part of me wanted the rules to break in public, loud enough that everyone would finally hear it. I woke at 3 to the wind howling like a living thing. Snow falling so thick the street lamp looked like a ghost. By 7, there was easily 18 inches on the ground, and it was still coming. I made coffee and watched the clock. At 7:45, my neighbor Dave across the street fired up his snowblower early, just like I had back in December, trying to get ahead of it. And sure enough, at 8:15, Deborah's silver Lexus glided down the street like a shark. She stopped, took photos, slapped a yellow notice on his door, and drove off. So at 8 a.m., when I was finally allowed, I stepped outside, looked at my driveway buried like a grave, and thought, yeah, this is exactly why people clear early. Then I went back inside and poured another cup of coffee. I sat by the window while the neighborhood filled with the sound of snowblowers and shovels scraping pavement, this chaotic winter symphony, and I did nothing because I was compliant. At 9:45, my phone rang. Mr. Patterson, voice tight. "Oliver, I think something's wrong with Mrs. Henderson. She's in pain. She's not answering. I called 911, but the street is blocked." Mrs. Henderson lived 3 doors down, sweet older widow, quiet, always waved, the kind of person you assume will just always be there. My stomach dropped. I told myself emergency vehicles are built for this. They'll handle it, but even as I said it, I knew residential streets don't get plowed fast, not during an active storm. At 10:07, I heard sirens. I pressed my face to the window and watched the ambulance turn onto our street. It made it maybe 50 feet, then sank into a drift like it hit quicksand. The driver tried to back up, wheels spinning, snow spraying, and then 2 paramedics climbed out and started trudging through knee-deep snow toward Mrs. Henderson's house with their gear bouncing on their shoulders. Dave called me, panicked. "Oliver, bring your snowblower, we need a path." I stared at my still-buried driveway, at the snow still falling, and the ugliest part of me, the part that wanted the rules exposed, said, "You're just following what they told you." I said it out loud, too like an idiot. "I'm following HOA rules section says I'm responsible for my driveway and walkway, not the street that's city property." There's a silence on the other end, the kind where you can hear someone losing respect for you in real time, and then Dave spits. "Mrs. Henderson could be dying," and hangs up. I watched through the window as Dave and Marcus and a few others grabbed shovels and started digging like their lives depended on it. 20 minutes of frantic labor later, the ambulance crawled forward. 15 minutes after that, the paramedics came out with Mrs. Henderson on a stretcher, her face twisted in pain, even from that distance. The ambulance had to reverse out because there wasn't room to turn around, and I felt this cold nausea settle in my chest. That's the moment where the petty victory tastes like ash, because suddenly it's not a policy argument anymore, it's a human being. That night, Dave showed up pounding on my door, eyes red, anger boiling. "She had a heart attack, doctors said the delay could have been fatal." I said the same stupid thing. I followed the rules. And he snapped, "This isn't about your fine, this is about being a decent human being." And he was right, and I hated that he was right. The next morning, Deborah came swinging. Another yellow notice, even more formal. This one fined me for not clearing snow within 4 hours of precipitation ending, and for failing to maintain emergency access, total due $1,000. I read it, then I laughed, because what else do you do when reality turns into satire? They fined me for clearing too early, then fine me for not clearing fast enough, during the exact kind of storm that proves why their rules are garbage. When I called, Deborah was cool as ice. "You should have started at 8 a.m. as soon as permitted." I told her that's not how physics works, that clearing 20 inches takes time, that early clearing prevents buildup. She said my excuses didn't matter, warned me about legal action, hinted at a lien on my property, and hung up. So I called an HOA attorney, Patricia Chun, sharp, calm, the kind of person who can slice someone in half with a polite sentence. She read the guidelines, highlighted the contradictions, and said, "These rules are a mess, you can't comply with all of them during a long storm." I asked what I could do. She gave me 3 paths: pay and beg for change, fight in court with expensive fees, or malicious compliance, but documented. Photos, timestamps, logs, everything. She said if the HOA kept escalating, they'd start looking unreasonable, and a judge would see it. I didn't pay. I appealed. Denied. They threatened the lien. I kept documenting. And when February 19th rolled around, the HOA meeting was packed, 40 residents, double the usual, because people were tired. I brought copies of the rules with the contradictions highlighted, passed them around, and explained exactly how it's impossible to satisfy no noise before 8 and clear within 4 hours during a real storm. People started speaking up. One woman said her husband got fined for clearing at 7 a.m. because he had dialysis. Another guy said he got fined for not clearing fast enough on a weekend when they couldn't start until 9. Deborah tried to shut it down, called it a free-for-all, denied my appeal again, threatened the lien again, and I said calmly, "Then I'll see you in court." 3 days later, the HOA lawyer sent a certified letter escalating, claiming I'd shown willful negligence, threatening damages tied to the ambulance incident. Patricia's reaction surprised me. "Good," she said. "The more aggressive they get, the worse they look." We filed suit in March, not just over the fines, over the contradictions, the safety hazard, the retaliation. A local reporter called. The story ran. The HOA suddenly wanted to settle, waive fines, if I signed an NDA. I said absolutely not, because the NDA was the whole point: silence, keep the machine running. Then Deborah retaliated in the pettiest way possible, new violations out of nowhere. My front door, wrong shade of brown landscaping, improperly trimmed mailbox damaged, because it had a dent, 7 notices in 3 weeks, $2,800 total. Patricia added it to the lawsuit, selective enforcement, harassment, the whole ugly pattern. And then Mrs. Henderson died in April, not sudden, but tied to that heart attack, and the guilt came back like a wave. I went to her memorial service, sat there feeling like a fraud, listening to her daughter talk about how safe her mother felt in Pine Ridge, and all I could think was I chose a policy point over picking up a shovel. After the service, her son approached me. I braced for anger, for blame. Instead, he shook my hand and said, "Thank you, Mom said those rules were stupid. She was glad you were fighting." He told me the doctors said the heart attack would have happened anyway, and the real problem was the person creating impossible rules and punishing people for trying to do right. I walked out of that church with my throat tight and my eyes burning, because it hit me. Sometimes you don't get to undo the moment you wish you'd been better, you just carry it, and you try to make sure it means something. May 10th, Boulder County Court. Courtroom packed with neighbors, a reporter, even a local TV crew. Judge Whitmore, sharp-eyed, no nonsense, looked at the HOA attorney and basically said, "So you fined him for clearing early, then fined him for not clearing fast enough, and now you say he should have cleared earlier." She didn't even try to hide the sarcasm. The HOA lawyer stumbled around balancing priorities, and the judge practically rolled her eyes. Patricia laid it out piece by piece: contradictions, expert testimony, selective enforcement. I took the stand and admitted the truth that part of why I didn't help with the ambulance was anger, fear of another fine, and yes, spite. It wasn't my proudest moment, but pretending I was a saint would have been a lie, and judges can smell lies like smoke. Then Deborah took the stand, and watching her answer questions was like watching someone try to hold water in their hands. Patricia asked about the spike in violations during Deborah's tenure, about the lack of complaints the morning I got fined, about how the March violations magically appeared after the lawsuit. Deborah kept repeating, "I enforce the rules as written," like it was her shield. Judge Whitmore finally asked her straight, coincidence or retaliation. Deborah dodged. The judge looked unimpressed, is putting it politely. After recess, Judge Whitmore delivered her ruling. All fines and violations against me invalid. Removed immediately. HOA ordered to revise snow policies within 60 days, with a resident committee, and approved by a majority vote, not just the board. And then the part that made my knees nearly give out. HOA ordered to pay my legal fees, $7,300. She didn't remove Deborah, said she couldn't, then strongly encouraged members to consider whether Deborah's leadership served the community. That's judge speak for, "You all see what I see, fix it." Outside the courtroom, neighbors were buzzing, like we'd all just gotten air after being underwater. Within weeks, a petition started. People organized to run against Deborah. A month later, she stepped down to pursue other interests, which is a fancy way of saying the neighborhood finally shoved her off the throne. We rewrote the snow rules, simple, logical. Clear when accumulation hits 2 inches, clear within 8 hours of snowfall ending, exceptions for emergencies, emergency access always takes priority, noise rules only for truly excessive noise. In August, residents voted, and it passed with 87% approval. For the first time since I moved in, Pine Ridge felt like a community instead of a compliance experiment. And now here's the twist nobody saw coming. Late July, I get a call from Detective Sarah Reynolds with Boulder PD. She says they're investigating financial misconduct at the HOA missing funds, and my name came up because of the lawsuit. I meet her, and she tells me an audit shows over $40,000 in dues and fines misallocated over 3 years. Deborah had sole authority over accounts fines collected that weren't recorded properly. The detective says, real calm, "We think she was pocketing some of the money." Suddenly that embossed HOA seal made sense. All that aggressive fining, the obsession with penalties, it wasn't just power, it was profit. I handed over everything, copies, payments, emails. Other residents did too. 2 months later, Deborah Martinez was arrested, charged with embezzlement and fraud. Convicted. 3 years in prison plus restitution. The HOA recovered most of the money and reduced dues the next year, which felt like the universe finally balancing its books. Now when it snows, I start my snowblower whenever it makes sense, and I'm back to clearing Mr. Patterson's walkway. He stands there with his bad hip, sipping coffee, smiling like he's watching justice with a front row seat. The neighborhood isn't perfect, but it's better because the rules finally serve people instead of serving the person holding the gavel. And the lesson I walked away with isn't HOAs are evil or fight everything. It's something uglier and truer. Unchecked power will always find a way to justify itself. And if you stay quiet long enough, it stops feeling like oppression and starts feeling like normal. Also, principles matter, but people matter more, and if your point requires you to ignore a stretcher in the snow, you're not making a point, you're losing your humanity. So yeah, karma showed up, not as lightning from the sky, but as paperwork, audits, court orders, and handcuffs, slow, boring, satisfying in the way real justice usually is. Now I've got one question for you, and I genuinely want to hear it. Where's the line between standing on principle and being obligated to help? Even if the system is unfair, like, if helping means you might get punished, do you still do it anyway, no matter what? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if you think I was right, wrong, or somewhere in that messy middle. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a boss, a landlord, anyone with petty power, I want to hear your story too, because I swear, the snow isn't the hardest thing to shovel, it's people who think rules make them untouchable.